Awesome. I'll kick it off. First, just thank you everyone for being here. For those that it's your first time, these chats are sponsored by Cura. Cura is a community that Alejandro Guzman and I are building, inspired by Sacred Heart Nativity alumni, and the Jesuit academic school education that has found so many highly motivated and highly talented young adults in their early careers. We are inspired to help y'all build a network of socially conscious leaders. So I have the very great privilege of finding people like today's speaker, Ms. Karla Enriquez, who I know personally and have worked with and have an amazing and really fruitful career journey, not without some obstacles and some ups and downs. And our goal is just to create a safe space to have some conversations and to keep it real, right? Have a place where you all can ask questions directly to any of us, and we can have some open conversations about work questions, resources, and how to get jobs and how to get better jobs in some cases. So thanks for joining. If you haven't already, please visit our website at cura.us, and you can sign up for our newsletter so that you will always be invited to all of these events. And if you have other motivated and excited friends like yourselves, feel free to pass the word on. And without further ado, I want to kick off the introduction to Karla Enriquez, who is working at Meta, particularly the Department of WhatsApp in the business communications. I had the pleasure of meeting her when she just started her career as an intern. We actually worked together, I don't even know, I should have tried to count before, but a long time ago. And we have stayed in touch over the years. She's kept me abreast on her movements and different jobs and different careers, awesome campaigns that she has run, launches that she's done all over Latin America. And I've just really always admired and appreciated her commitment, inspired by her story. So Karla, thanks so much for joining us today. And I'd love it if you could just give us a little bit of an introduction and just how the heck did you get a job as a business communication specialist at Meta, and how did it even start? Did you even know what communications was?
I had no idea. I had no idea. Jen, thanks for inviting me. And before we dive in, I just really want to applaud you guys for being the young, ambitious, smart, dedicated students, alumni, soon to be professionals already. Like, you guys are just awesome and so inspiring. So kudos to you all for continuing your drive. And yeah, Jen, I think, gosh, it must have been 12 years ago or something.
I was thinking that.
We met in DC. And actually, when we met in DC was when I discovered communication. So, I mean, I want to say that I always had the goal in mind, but to be honest, it was something that I discovered along the way. And I think it's going to be something that you all probably experience, is that we're all evolving. And as we evolve, we learn what those passions are. So to answer your question, Jen, how did I end up in communication? It was by accident, but I want to say that it was also just a part of who I was meant to be. Just to like take it all the way back, when I was, well, first of all, like, let's take it way back. I was a first generation immigrant. So I was born in Mexico. And when I was 4 years old, my family immigrated to California. And I want to say that just being that first generation immigrant, like, I already had the hustle in me, right? Where I was helping my parents fill out their applications and translating documents and like helping with customer service, that kind of stuff. Like, I was always just the parent from the get-go because I was forced into that situation. And so maybe, like, now that I think about it out loud, like, that was inherently a part of my communication. Like, how it got planted in me was the fact that I was communicating for my parents all my
Karla,
life.
I think it's funny that you say that, because when people ask me how long I've been doing public relations, I often say, like, since I was 6 years old. Like, I had to get the table at the restaurant, right? I had to go do the return. Like, I had to negotiate everything.
Exactly. So it's funny that we say this because, like, it kind of is true, right? So that was my entry into the United States, learning English, learning the system, explaining to my parents like what prom is, what SATs are, what college applications, what that's all like. So I feel like as I was educating myself, I was also educating my parents along the way. And then fast forward to high school, I was just having a conversation earlier this week where I feel like one of my superpowers is just being a chameleon, meaning that you can't put me into any one box. And, that started from a very young age, and that's still who I am today, where I feel like I can adapt based on whoever I'm around. So I could be with you guys tonight, or I could be with like the CEO of a company, or I can be with my girlfriends. Like, it just all depends. And you're going to see a different version of me, but it's still the same person. And so in high school, I kind of tried it all. I tried sports, I tried drama, I tried, being a part of my school board. So I feel like all of those experiences, allowed me to try different things. And I remember one day I was a junior in high school, and it was around that time when you're starting to think about college applications and what you want to do in life, and like all these really big questions that I had no idea. And I was sitting down in lunch with my boyfriend at the time, and we asked each other, like, what do you see me when we grow up? Like, what do you see me doing? And so it was really interesting because it was a casual conversation. And I told him what I thought he would be. And then he told me what he thought I would be. And he's like, I could see you being a journalist. And I had never even thought about it. And then when he said that was when I was like, I could see me as a reporter too. I really like writing. I really like talking to people. I really like storytelling. And so the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. And fast forward to college applications, I applied to the closest thing that was journalism at the time, which was communication. Mm-hmm. And I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, which had a communication program. But back then, it was just a very broad major. It didn't have any sort of specialty. And so that was when I went to college and I started experimenting with different forms of communication, like organizational communication, which is how organizations communicate, or journalism, which was what I was interested in, interpersonal communication, which was more relationship building. And so then trying different forms of that communication at the same time, I picked up a second major, which was global studies, because I was from a small town called Watsonville, and no one in my town traveled. They didn't really know anything beyond that small town mentality. And then going to college and learning about different cultures and different languages was just mind-blowing to me. And so while I was doing communication, I was also learning about international relations as sort of like something that I was curious about. And so then my last year of college was when we met, Jen. I went to DC. I did the UCDC program, where you took night classes, and then you also were interning in different places. My internship at the time, I was still on this journalism track. And I had interned at Univision in Santa Barbara. So then I went to DC, and it was like talk radio news service or something like that. And then it must have only been 1 week into that internship where I was like hustling and going to different hearings. And it was my first winter, because I grew up in California, and it was my first time in the East Coast where I experienced what it was to be in the snow. I remember like running to this hearing that I was running late, and I slipped on the ice. And so I was late, I was wet, I was injured. I'm like, this internship is awful. Like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And I talked to a counselor, and so we thought, I need a new internship. Let's try something different. And that's when I got plugged into Crosby Vollmer, which was the agency that we met. And it was my first like experience on the other side of communication, where I still wanted to be in media in some capacity, but I didn't want to be a journalist. And so I discovered that there's this whole other industry called communication, where it's sort of like PR, public relations, where you're still working with reporters to tell a story, but you're on the other side of it, so that you're working with them to inform them on what that story is about. So whether it's a politician who's pursuing a campaign, to a sports team who's promoting, your season, to Nike releasing a new product, like it could be anything. It just depends on what you're interested in. So that was how I started in communication.
I appreciate that explanation, because I feel like my family, I'm half Salvadorian, half Bolivian, and all of my family still asks me like, so what exactly is it that you do? So I think that's really helpful. What has been the most fun or exciting campaign that you've worked on from public relations, and what makes it fun?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two things come to mind. The first one that came to mind was this program that I launched at Meta. I'm still getting used to the name. And it was around, it's a very complicated term that I don't even know how you pronounce it, but it's short for EMG, which is like how in the future we're going to control the devices that we use. So for example, today we have a mouse and we use the mouse to guide where the cursor is on a screen. But in the future, and I'm talking like 20 years from now, it's called electromagnetic something, EMG, where basically you're going to control the device based on your thought. So you think something like, I want to change the channel, or I want to order those shoes. And we're obviously working on these glasses that are augmented reality, where you're still immersed in your world, but you're wearing, like, let's say a pair of glasses. And so you're still navigating the world, you're still walking, but you're also thinking and you're controlling whatever thought you have in mind. Like, I want to send this text, or I want to move this screen. It's a very complicated technology, very forward looking. But last year we announced the fact that we were researching this and how we're thinking about it for future products. And so I got to work with really smart people, like scientists, renowned scientists from around the world, on this research that they're doing. And so how do you put together this very complicated technology and make it so that regular people can understand, and put together visuals that are very like dynamic? So that was super interesting, but just because I'm a nerd and I love science. But right now I'm also working on my current role, which is at WhatsApp, and I love WhatsApp, and how businesses all over the world are using this technology to communicate with their customers. Like, no one likes to dial a 1-800 number. No one likes to send an email. No one likes to be on the phone with the customer service rep. So how do we use the tools that we have today to meet customers where they're at, which is basically in messaging. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And I just started in this role about 4 weeks ago. So yeah, I would say those are two examples that come to mind.
Since you're and I'll just pause to say, feel free, anyone at any time, to just either raise your hand or jump in with a question, or you can add one to the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. I love that you're new to this role and that this is all fresh for you. What is the hiring process like, and the interview process? How did you get to get the job that you have? How long does it take? Where do you start?
It's a great question. I feel like I'm a believer in the universe aligning opportunities when they're right, but you have to allow the universe to help you out. Right. So like, you got to put in the work to have the opportunities come up. So a long way, I've now been at Meta for 2 years. I got to Meta during the pandemic. So we're going to keep it real here. And the pandemic sucked. And at the time when it first started, I was working at TripAdvisor. And obviously the travel industry was not the best place to be in when a pandemic hits and travel stops. So there was a cut and my position was eliminated. And so that was in April or March of 2020. April of 2020. But like I said, the universe aligning things and you got to put in the work. I had already been, anticipating that move for myself, and the universe just kind of forced me to make a decision. So I had already been planting seeds in different places and having conversations with people who I knew in the industry. So when I got cut, I had already been in conversation with Meta. So,
and did
so
you
kind of
know somebody in there, or was it
I
a submitted resume?
I did know people there, but I also it's funny, right? Like you want to reach out to people and have those conversations, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to do it on my own. I didn't want to pull the lever. I only pull the lever when I absolutely need it. And by pull the lever, I mean people on the inside and you want to get your name in. And at that time, I just didn't feel like I was that in need of it. And I just wanted to do it on my own. And so I was talking to a recruiter. So a tip would be, if you're interested in a place and you don't know someone at the company, that's always the first stop, right? Who do I know there? And more likely than not, especially at big companies, it's in our interest to bring in talent. So people get a bonus if you refer someone and they get hired. So don't be shy about reaching out and asking for your application to be submitted, because they want to help you, because they also get some incentive for it. So that would be my first thing is if you know someone at the company, reach out to them and be very specific with what you want. So, I see this position. Do you know the hiring manager? Can you submit my application? What do you want? And then be very specific about that. So I got to Meta because I actually had a recruiter reach out to me. And that's how I got the conversation going, was just that person reaching out. So it was kind of the reverse. I didn't reach out to anyone. Someone reached out to me. And then there were a few different roles, because these companies are massive, right? They have so many teams or so many opportunities. So I was actually interviewing for 3 different roles. And the first one was Instagram. I didn't get the Instagram one. The second one was a financial technology role. And they really loved me. I had talked to them for about 2 months. And then I was almost getting an offer when they decided to put the position on hold and they weren't going to move forward with it. I was like, no, I invested so much time into this, and now they're just in a freeze. And then the third one was the role that I ultimately got hired for. I wasn't in love with it, to be honest. I was just sort of okay, well, get my foot in the door and then I'll ride out the pandemic and figure it out from there, which is 2 years later what I've done now. And that's why I have the new role. But yeah, that's a very long way of answering a question. So the first thing is who do I know at the company? The second thing is a recruiter. Is there a recruiter at that company that I can talk to? The third tip that I have, which is actually something that worked for me in one of the jobs that I got. So at TripAdvisor, I'm all about exploration, trying different things. And so I had been at PayPal, which is financial technology, and I just wasn't in love with it. I mean, it was fine, but I love travel. And like I said earlier, one of my passions is international relations. And so when I was on vacation and I thought, what do I want to do next? And so I thought, I want to go into travel. That's, it's what I love. It's what I'm passionate about. And I came back from vacation. So I'm like, I want to go into travel. I live in San Francisco. I want to stay in technology. What are the companies that come to mind? And immediately it was like Airbnb and TripAdvisor. So then I check on Airbnb site, they're not hiring. And then I check on the TripAdvisor career site and I see, going back to the universe aligning, a position exactly my level in San Francisco for public relations. And so I'm like, this is perfect. And the job description said, reporting to a director in Boston. So I did some LinkedIn stalking and I'm like, TripAdvisor, director, Boston. Sure enough, this lady comes up and I just direct message or whatever LinkedIn calls it. And I'm like, hi, sorry to randomly drop in, but I saw this position. Would you happen to know the hiring manager? And she was like, I'm the hiring manager. Send me your resume. So I sent her my resume and that's how I got my job at TripAdvisor.
Wow, the power of LinkedIn. And I just love the practice of pausing to be like, what do I want to do next? Right? Like not just having things carry you, but really being deliberate. Myra, exactly. I saw your hand up and I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit because first time on this call and I have been reaching out to you. I've been LinkedIn stalking you. So share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So as Jen said, I am a Cristo Rey alumni. I was the first graduating class, so I graduated in 2018. I just finished my bachelor's in industrial labor and relations from Cornell, and now I'm working for Pepsi. So I am an HR rep for our North Beverages division there. And I've been there since January. I had a previous internship there. So now I'm there and I'm liking it so far.
That's awesome.
And I did have a question. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about now, but I did have a question. So I'm interested in knowing in your WhatsApp position now, when I think of WhatsApp, at least for me, I use it very informally. It's not like a very formal, professional way. Like I use it to like talk to my family in Mexico. Like, has there been any narrative on how, like, is this how the population sees WhatsApp and now they're shifting towards like using it for businesses and more professionally, or like how does that mentality has worked, or is it just me that uses it like not in a professional way?
No, I think you're right. And that's exactly the shift that we're seeing is, Meta has been innovating in communication. It started with like your news feed, then your stories and video and reels. So there's sort of been like an evolution of how consumers are using these apps. And to your point, like WhatsApp is, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like WhatsApp is massive, right? Like anywhere outside of the US, that's how people communicate. And so if you guys have ever traveled, like, or let's say you're trying to catch a flight or you're trying to make changes to your hotel reservation. I'll use an example that I just experienced. So I went to Zanzibar in Africa like 2 months ago. And obviously the internet service out there is really choppy and unreliable. So and the time zone differences, like it was impossible to get a hold of my hotel. And then I found the number on the website. So I'm like, let me just try WhatsApping this person because he's not responding to my emails, not answering my phone calls. And sure enough, I was able to coordinate with the hotel using WhatsApp. And so that's just one example. Another example, like going back to my TripAdvisor days, back then, my role was to work with what we called suppliers who were like the activities provider. So if you're going kayaking, if you're going mountain climbing, if you're going ziplining, whatever activity that you do on vacation, how do these people coordinate with their customers? Like they're already on the go. They're not behind a computer screen, but they still like, where do I pick you up? Like, where's your hotel? What time are you arriving? Like these sorts of just back and forth communication. And so I saw how a lot of these suppliers, a lot of these small businesses were using WhatsApp to coordinate with their business. So there's obviously a massive opportunity to not only help small businesses, but also like airlines, like your flight changed or your flight is delayed. No one's going to be reading their email for that. Well, they are, but like it's not an effective use of the channel. So there's a lot of opportunity for both customers to get the information that they need from a business, and for businesses to communicate whatever it is they need to communicate to their customers. Even for example, in Brazil, like people don't like WhatsApp is their business. WhatsApp is their website. That's how they manage their inventory, like the stuff that they have in their store. So there's just a lot of opportunity to make that communication a lot easier. Same with Messenger. If you guys are on Facebook and you see a brand that you follow and that brand is trying to promote something like a new sneaker release, but you want to know, is it in my size? Is it in my color? So that's where the customers are. That's where a lot of you, like you and I, are probably on Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp. And so these businesses, like, stop getting on those email 1-800 numbers, like get to where your customers are.
That's a really good point. Different trends in businesses. One thing I was going to ask you is, I know it's a really competitive and busy space. How do you manage some of that time? What does your daily work schedule look like?
Yeah, that's the challenge. Right? Yeah. So I sigh because I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. And in communication, in PR, you're basically on around the clock, because if a reporter has a story that they want to write, or they want your quote, or they saw something come up that they have a question about, they're pinging you, they're messaging you, or sending you an email. And so you have to respond. So that's one aspect of the job, is if a reporter is asking, like, you have to be there. And then the second component of the job that's tough is, I mean, I mentioned my love for international, which I feel so passionate about. But at the same time, I'm working with global teams at all hours of the day. So I'll start more like my mornings at 6 a.m. to be on a call with the team in Europe. And then, you know, after this, for example, I'll have a call with our team in APAC, in Indonesia, or in Singapore. So it's sort of like you work really early for your Europe, and then you work your day-to-day for the US, and then you work in the evenings for Asia. That's not every day, but I mean, it is sort of a balance of what days are you free and what days are your own sacred time. Like, for example, Tuesday afternoons after 5 o'clock, like I have Barry's boot camp. And so I am logging out for 3 hours and just making sure that I have that personal time for myself, because I feel like if you're not in a good place yourself, you're not going to show up good for other people, or in the best way possible for others.
Yeah, no, I agree. We talk a lot about that as well, right? It's just mental health and just emotional support and how you balance it. I feel like growing up, we didn't do a lot of that, right? And I'm hopeful that this era of awareness around mental health has brought it to be more of a normalized conversation in work settings, right? Of we can't just pretend that we're robots anymore. I think there's some good that came out of the pandemic, that we're humans, you know, and that we need to have some of our off time. I'm just curious, from the crowd of everyone that's here, is anybody right now in the middle of job hunting and have any specific questions or questions around positioning? One thing I was going to recommend is for everyone to look up Karla Enriquez on LinkedIn and request her to be your friend. She is, I guess you're not friends, it's on LinkedIn, what's it called? A colleague. And just put Cura in the message to her, so she knows that where you're calling in from. Even if it's not a direct link or a direct hire into WhatsApp, right? I think that Karla is willing and open to connect with y'all. And I think that building your network is a really key component of this. I also really love your LinkedIn page, Karla. I think it's really impressive. You know, we've put together some like LinkedIn playbooks to help people build out their profiles. Is there anything that you have that you recommend on LinkedIn? It seems like you're just really good at it. From a branding perspective, you're getting noticed by recruiters. It's really clear and concise. Like, how have you learned how to make it like a good one?
Yeah, I actually I really like LinkedIn.
Yeah, me too.
And I always have, but I'm not very active. It's funny because like I love it and I use it maybe like 2 or 3 times a day. I just pop in. But I think that there's opportunity for me to post more and to be more of like a thought leader, which I love and follow a lot of people, but I've never really thought of myself as like a thought leader. So I don't post, but I do read other people's posts. But yeah, one thing to your point earlier about authenticity, I think authenticity, like really being who you are. And for me, LinkedIn, for example, I remember when I first started, a lot of people wrote their about sections in like a third voice, like Karla is great at blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hi, I'm Karla, like, because I'm talking to the person. So talk to the person would be my recommendation on that. I also posted my resume. So like my resume is visible if anyone wants to like dig deeper into my background. I actually modeled my resume. So my first big company was at Yahoo. And I started at Yahoo right after Marissa Mayer, who is a CEO. She was like huge here in Silicon Valley. And so she left Google and joined Yahoo. And at the time it was like big news. So I loved Marissa Mayer and I always admired her. I actually modeled my resume based on hers. So it was like, I used her same template basically. So that was my resume strategy. And then I posted the resume in my LinkedIn. And then I feel like, I don't know SEO a lot, but like keep it simple and just use the main words. And so that's kind of how I structured my job titles. And then like a very short, I don't even think I have job description. I just have like the companies. And like I said, like people are busy. They're not going to read your whole novel. So like give them the bullet points, put your resume if they want to dig deeper, and then keep your about section like as concise as you can. And like I said, have some personality. So those are my pointers on LinkedIn. But then, yeah, so help recruiters find you. And then if you find someone, just reaching out directly. And like I said, just being very direct on what you're looking for. Like, what question do you have? What's the ask? I've had a lot of people reach out where they're like, hey, how are you? How's it going? And I'm like, how's it going? I'm very busy right now. I don't have time to tell you how it's going, but like, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Right. So if you could just help them help you, I think that it works for everyone.
I love that. That's such a good point. People are willing to help if you can just tell them like, what do you need? What do we need here? I was going to ask you about jobs right now at Meta. Meta is hiring. How would somebody go about applying and what kind of position or people are they looking for?
Yes. So 2 things. I'll answer your question directly and then the second thought. So we are hiring, and I'm here as someone, if you don't know anyone at the company, if you're interested, go to the career site, filter through the different categories. And if you find something that's interesting, I am more than happy to send you in the right place. So, and if you have other companies that you're interested in too, like I have a pretty big network here in Silicon Valley. So if it's Google, if it's LinkedIn, like just let me know and I probably know someone there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a lot of these companies have like their budget. So just knowing the timing of when stuff opens up, because it's usually towards the end of the year, like October timing, that a lot of teams are putting their budget request. So, October, November is when budgets are being finalized. And then January, February is when budgets are approved. And then like March, April is when like the teams actually start looking for headcount or like start hiring aggressively. That's generally what I've seen at most companies that I've been at. So I would just think of it like if you're graduating from college, or if you're leading an internship, or if you're just looking for a new role, that spring timing is usually when most opportunities open up.
Wow. So the time is now.
Yeah, the time is now.
And do you have any current positions open on your team? And if so, what types of candidates do you look for?
Yeah, so not immediately in my team, but definitely for communication at large. Honestly, like there's just so much activity happening. And so it's really exciting, I think, from all perspectives, whether you're an engineer, whether you're in recruiting or in communication and marketing. There's a lot of growth that the company is seeing. And so I would just recommend, again, like, what are you interested, reaching out. And, you know, in communication specifically, there's a lot of product stuff that's opening up. And so, you know, if you're interested in working on any of the products, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, or some of like the other technologies that I mentioned, that's like more virtual reality, augmented reality, like future looking stuff, there is so much opportunity. So it's honestly just going on the site and searching for what you're interested in, because there's a ton of positions out there.
That's awesome.
And I will say, like, the other thing about, there's always silver linings in everything. And I feel like one of the silver linings from the pandemic was the fact that remote work is now a thing.
Yeah.
So whereas before, you know, you really had to be tied to a location and the office, now, I mean, a lot of companies, but Meta specifically, like, it doesn't really matter where you are. If you're open to remote work, that's something that the company is encouraging. So that's also really awesome, I think, and like opens up so much more opportunity for people across the board.
Huge game changer, right? You can live anywhere, not have to pay Bay Area prices.
Right. Or even here in San Francisco. I mean, I live in the city, and I have the option of going into the office, but I'm like, I have a lot of stuff to do. So like, I'd rather be in my home. But you also just have all the flexibility. So if you want to go into the office, if you want to work from home, if you want to be at home full time, you have all options.
It's so true. You have accomplished so much. How do you, and when do you think about like what's next, right? Like, do you think about it from a professional place? Because I have followed your career, and you've been at really great corporations and brands and have always grown into it. Do you consciously think about what role you want next? Is that is there like a professional roadmap that you have, right? Or is a lot of this just like personal growth that you're looking to achieve, or a combination?
I think it's a combination. I mean, it's hard to say, like, what do you want to be in 5 years or 10 years? I think for me, I've literally just always followed, it sounds so cliche, but like just following my passion, right? So what is working, what is not working? So I do have benchmarks. For example, I've worked at big companies because I've also worked at agencies. So just like knowing what that is like, knowing what I like, knowing what I don't like. And then, okay, so, and then trying to align my interests with what are the things that are like a must have. So for example, I love to travel. So like I want, and I love learning about different cultures. So I look for roles that give me that opportunity. I need my 401k. I want my, you know, restricted stock units. Like you want your health insurance. So like, I want those benefits. I negotiate really hard for what I want and for what I think I deserve. So those are like must haves. I must work for someone that is like equal parts smart and like a good human being. I think that's really important to me, because you want to work with people who you get along with, who inspire you, and who have your back. I've had managers of all spectrums, but the best managers are the ones that have your long-term interests in mind, and not just for the company, but for you as an individual. I've had a manager who I was working for her, and she's like, I want you to stay with me. I'll send you to London if you stay with me. But she also was the one who referred me to my next job at PayPal.
Wow.
So like, that was someone who, again, like, knew I was unhappy, was willing to like give me the candy to go to London, but then ultimately was like, all right, you want bigger things. And so she planted somewhere else. So like, having a good manager is a must have for me. And then lastly, like, working in areas that I'm passionate about, like subject matters that I'm passionate about. So like, as long as I have those things, I feel like I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. And then when it starts to not be fulfilling, then I, start to have conversations with other teams, other companies. I've moved around quite a bit. I would say on average, I've changed either roles or company every 2 years. And I've been very lucky that that movement has allowed me to also elevate. So it wasn't like, I want to elevate. It was like, no, I just want to find something that makes me happy. And as I'm doing that, I'm elevating just by nature of doing what I love.
That's a really, really good point. In the communications and marketing space that you've been in, how have you felt the representation of like diversity and inclusion in the companies that you've been at? Can you tell us a little bit about what you see from the inside and
yeah, honestly,
and do to change some of it?
There's a lot of opportunity for growth there. But what's weird is like, and this is not right, but by nature of the fact that I've been that first generation immigrant Latina, like I kind of always was the only one, right? Like I was the only one, like the brown person at Santa Barbara. I was like one of the only, and I was like this really young girl going to USC. I didn't mention this part, but after Santa Barbara, I went to USC to pursue my master's. And this was like right during the 2008 recession. So I was like, I'm going to go to grad school and ride this out. And I was like in my early 20s going to these MBA night classes, or they're all like mid 30-year-olds. And so here's this like 20-year-old Latina in these like night classes with 30-plus-year-old, mostly male. And so again, like I've just always been an outsider. And so now being in a, professional environment, like I'm still an outsider, but like I've always been, so it hasn't really been that different. But I will say that at Meta, which is something that I have really appreciated, is that they are genuinely trying to elevate, women, people of color, just people from different backgrounds. And so that like desire to improve, to recognize that there's so much opportunity for growth, like, you're not their company, but like, thanks for at least acknowledging it and like putting in the right steps to make it work.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I have a question. When you were referring to, hi everyone, I'm Autumn. By the way, I am here in Baltimore and I am a therapist by trade, but I'm actually looking to pivot into product management and working with a company in which they, a mental health startup company, and really helping to develop some of their ideas and adding my clinical expertise. So that's where I am right now. And so thank you, Karla, for being here and sharing your knowledge. I'm really taking a lot away from it. Something that, my antennas went up when you mentioned the word negotiation. And that's where I find to be one of my, one of the things that I feel really challenged by, really acknowledging, or I guess like listing out my skills, my abilities, and like matching it up with what I know I deserve, and really, trying to, put that forth and present that to, the employer. I've tried it multiple times, and each time it like backfires. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know one thing is for certain, is, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, you're going to drive yourself insane. So I would love to get your input on what negotiation looks like for you, and, in regards to, what, how, in your, and help you out with being successful, at it.
Yeah. So, I feel like I always negotiate, first of all. So whether it's starting a new job, or it's moving roles, or it's during your like quarterly review, or whatever opportunity that you have with your manager, like, let's be professional, and like, we're getting different things from this exchange, right? So always using that opportunity to ask for what you want, and reminding your manager what it is that you want. There's a book, Ramit Sethi, I think is his last name. It's called like How I Will Teach You How to Be. It's like a terrible title, but it's a great book, and I highly recommend it. I think it's I Will Teach You How to Be Rich. Everyone should read that book, first of all. And I wish I had read that book when I was in high school, because again, being like first generation immigrant, I had to learn all these things on my own. So there's a chapter in that book that that is all about negotiation, and how to approach the conversation, how to like keep your manager accountable to the plan that you guys set for yourself. So, like, let's say you're doing your year-end check-in, or your quarterly review, whatever it is that you call it at your company. What do you want? Like, do you want a raise? Do you want a promotion? Like, being very clear about what you want, having the conversation with your manager, setting a plan, like whether it's a 3-month plan or a 6-month plan. Yes, thank you. That's the book. And then 3 to 6 months, having like, here's how I'm performing based on this plan. At the end of your term, like, all right, this is what we agreed on. Here's what I accomplished. And then, hopefully you'll have what it is that you're asking for. So that's like, if you're in a job trying to negotiate. But obviously the best time to negotiate is when you're entering a new company, because that is when you have all of the leverage. And especially at companies like Meta, for example, like right now, come in with negotiating for RSUs or negotiating for salaries, because it's always going to be like, and RSUs are restricted stock units. So, that's when, let's say they'll give you like 10 shares, for example, which they won't give you 10, like ask for more. But let's say like as a baseline 10, you're like, I love that, but like either I want 30, 40 shares, or you give me this salary. And always, whenever you're starting a new job, and you're having that conversation with the recruiter, like, what's your current salary? Always have them give you the number first. Like, don't give them the number of what you're earning now. Like, ask them, what's your range? And then have the conversation. Because if you come in with like, oh, I'm making like 50,000, for example, then they're going to come back with like, okay, 55,000. Don't do that. Like, have them give you their range. And like, I'd feel more comfortable if you tell me like what the range is for this position. So put it on them, have them give you the number first. So those would be some of my tips.
All right. Thank
Wow.
you.
Carla, well, that's amazing. And I got a question that's actually, I think might help more people than me, but wow, how could you explain that confidence that you bring? Because I feel whenever you're entering a job, you somehow, if you've struggled getting it, you feel like, oh, thank you for doing me this favor. And you put it in a way that I'm bringing my talent to your company. So I got also leverage to negotiate. I mean, when you said at the entry level is when you get leverage, I felt like, oh, for me, it was like the moment that I had the least leverage ever. So how do you put it from your experience? And it's amazing. I mean, I'm taking that away with me also. I mean, how do you put it? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, at the start when you're trying to get the job. Especially like if you're even having that conversation about salary or RSUs or a start date, that means they already want you. You're not having that conversation if they're like talking to 10 other candidates. You're having that conversation because they basically have already realized that they want you. So now they're trying to determine how much it's going to cost. So if you're having that conversation about salary, that means that you have the leverage and you need to come to the table with what you want. So that would be my put there.
That's awesome, Karla.
Super inspiring.
Yeah, very, very inspiring and very true. You know, I think a lot of us are sometimes in that position where we're just so grateful, right? So grateful to have a job, so grateful to be at the table that we don't oftentimes appreciate our worth and our value. I know it's sometimes hard to do. I also think even just having friends, you know, that you can go to and have these conversations with that have been in a similar situation. It's not like you need a mentor that's like 50 years older, right? Just someone that has just kind of gone through that path with you, I think is really helpful. And that has helped me in the past. It's just like, hey, I'm going through this process of negotiations right now. Like, what have you seen in your industry and even different industries to see trends and to be flexible? I really love that advice.
Yeah. And honestly, a recruiter is expecting it. So it would be a surprise if you don't negotiate, because it's like, oh, wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
So a recruiter, like if you're having the conversation, they're expecting you to come back and, you know, keep them on their toes.
Yeah.
No, let me get back to you in a few days, or I'll get back to you in a week. Because you should also be talking to other companies. You're not just going to put all your eggs in one basket. So, so if you like tell them like, let me think about it, it's going to keep them on their toes. They're going to expect you to negotiate. So just always come with that mentality of like, they know I'm going to give them a higher number and there's going to be a little back and forth. So go high. Don't bring it to like 5K or 10K, like go 20, go 30, like go big.
Mm-hmm. I love this. I feel like this could also be really good dating advice too. It's really good. We have about 5 minutes left. And so I just wanted to take a pause to see if there's any final questions for Karla, and also use this opportunity if there's other topics or themes that you all want to talk about. We do these chats for you. So we want to make sure that we're addressing any needs or questions or themes that you guys have on your mind as well. Last minute.
I really like, you know, I'm so happy, Jen, that you mentioned the LinkedIn profile tidbit. I think that would be a really good chat as well. I don't think a lot of people know the gem that is LinkedIn. I am people. I just discovered, you know, LinkedIn recently. Well, as far as like how much, how much of a resource it is, and how much easier it makes the job process or job hunting and finding process. So I think I've seen a lot of LinkedIn profiles and I'm just like, wowed, like, how did they do this? What is the layout? I know that Cura does have, like, I did explore your website and I saw that you all did have like a LinkedIn, tips and tricks, but I think having a conversation or a chat around it would also be useful.
That's an awesome idea. We are happy to do like a workshop too. So it's like a working session and we can pull out like our top 5 favorites, to look through and sort of address like best practices of what we're doing. In the playbook, I do give like a short summary of an about us, just to give you a place to start, right? I often think sometimes the hardest place to start is just from like a blank screen. So you can delete, take what you want, take what you don't like. But hopefully some of the prompts help. But Autumn, I love that. And we'll be happy to do a LinkedIn boot camp.
Awesome. I'll be there.
Yeah, that's what we'd love to see. I just really enjoy getting some new people on the calls and some people that have been here for the last year. I hope that y'all know that we want to make this and curate this for you to bring resources like Karla and resources. I'll make a pitch for Crisis Text Line, which is a mental health service free texting service. You can text Cura. We're sponsoring it for you, so it's free. Text Cura to 741-741 and tell them anything. You can say, I'm having a really shitty day right now, and they'll respond to you. You don't have to pay an hour for a therapist sometimes. It's hard, right? It's a luxury to do that. Please tell your friends. We just want to have the resources out, because part of navigating early careers is not just the technical aspect of recruitment and jobs, but it's really stressful. And we oftentimes have different types of stress. So we hope to bring these resources and just share all the resources that we find for you all. If you haven't signed up for Cura.us, please visit our website and sign up so that you don't miss any of the newsletters or resources. And we will be having these about monthly, and feel free to email me. I'm Jen@Cura.us, and just email me directly and say, hey, I've really been struggling with this. Can you help? Hey, I noticed you know this person on LinkedIn. Can you introduce me? Happy to. Hey, can you take a look at my resume? We're happy to help you all navigate this time and hopefully build a network so that you can connect with each other, connect with socially conscious leaders like Karla, and learn. We can all learn from each other's shared experiences. Karla, any closing thoughts?
I mean, just thank you guys. Keep on rocking it. Feel free to also reach out to me if you're interested in any of the things that I just mentioned during the last hour. I'm more than happy to, be a part of this community and help you guys out. And then, yeah, just take care of yourself, because like I said earlier, if take the time to go on a walk, to clear your mind, and yeah, just keep pushing, and it sounds so cheesy, but to go after the things that you love and that you're, super inspired by.
I love it, Karla. I loved having you on tonight. I feel like there's a lunch in our future very soon.
Yeah, I would love to.
I'm excited to reconnect with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
For sure.
Thank you.
Tell Asia, sorry, we got a local call.
Asia can wait.
Bye, all. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you all for being here. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.